Morning all. Gosh, it looks a whole lot more of you when you stand up here. Hey, look, we're a main contractor, so we're a builder. We're not a particularly big company, but we do manage between 25 and 30 sites at any one time. And what we found is that subcontractors like yourselves, we need you. We can't do the job without you. We rely on you for expertise to understand what we have to be done from an electrical point of view and to keep our projects working. But what we also see is you guys bring a lot of hazards to our sites, not just electrical hazards, but using power tools and several other things. What we've become very aware of with the changes of the Act is that you guys now have as much accountability as we do, and it's pretty important that we all try and work together. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a safer outcome for all we're trying to work for, and it's not just about the people in this room, the bosses, it's actually about the people out doing the job. It's actually the guys at the coalface. The risk is there for everyone. So what are we doing? We've decided to create a health and safety pre-qualification process, and just about, I would say, most contractors are going to have to go through this. And the idea is, before anyone gets to site, there's actually documentation that's checked that people actually do have the required health and safety systems. It's important that not you just have the documentation that sits in the back folder and you fire it out. It's actually a live document that everybody needs to see. And for us, all subcontractors actually have to supply that to us before they can even get any work. It's important as well to know that it's not just saying, oh, we've supplied it, it's ensuring that it's actually current. So we've set a minimum requirement also for any sites, and it's not really just our requirement, it's actually the law, is that task analysis and competency registers are two things that every site should have from every single contractor working on there. So ideally, it's not just about, again, firing off a bit of paper, it's ensuring that the actual task analysis, which I'll give you an example of shortly, is actually what the guys are doing. And it's very easy to sit back in an office and write out a nice clean procedure and then file those to the site foreman for wherever you're working. But again, from a main contracting point of view, our foremen now are learning that they check these things. And I've got to say that whenever I walk on site and look at a task analysis that is no fingerprints on it, it's stuck in the folder, it concerns me because it shows me that people actually haven't used it. The ones that we see that have been handwritten over, things are crossed out, it shows that at least people have actually started to make an effort. So why are we doing it? Well, we're dedicated, like everyone, to health and safety. We're also part of the charter as well. But the reality is that as a business owner and as a boss, ultimately people say, hey, you're worried about money. Money can't replace staff. If we were to have anyone seriously injured or killed on any of our sites, first we'd have to live with it morally, but financially could have big implications, and the culture in our business would die. And it's such an important thing that everybody gets on the same page with it. We're committed to ensure that everyone works towards high health and safety standards. So, you know, it's one of those things that you go back 5 years ago and you would never see high vis on a building site for residential construction. You know, they might have some footwear. Now, look around the room, there's high vis everywhere. You go out to any site or even just walk in the streets of Christchurch and, you know, it seems to be a standard uniform. It is again that change in mindset from everyone to understand what they actually should be doing and to ensure as well that they do have the adequate requirements. Can I ask, who's been injured at work here? I have. Yep, so a big chunk of this room. We did a little exercise at our last staff breakfast, and I stood up out of 60 guys. I stood up 17 staff who had been injured in the last 4 months. So, you know, that's a very big chunk of our business. And look, most of them, to be fair, were only small accidents. But those small accidents, they start to add up, and small accidents can turn to big ones. Now, when you start to see guys that don't wear glasses and they get dust in their eyes, and they, you know, a couple of near-miss forms come through, an accident form for, you know, going back to the doctor to get your eyes washed out. It's again that culture of ensuring that people actually do it, and it's a lot of it is the guys in this room, the guys that are actually at the coalface doing the job, and then a lot of it is also you guys who actually are here as bosses to take it back and ensure that you guys actually convey to your staff the importance of actually following procedure. And I know that Alan was pushing on that before. This is going to take time, everyone. It's quite scary to think, and I know from a personal perspective when we started, looking around at the mountains of paperwork and just sitting back and going, shit, what does this actually mean? You know, we're builders, you know, like you guys are Sparkies, we're trades-based, and now we have all this paperwork to deal with. But it's about continual improvement. It's about everyone trying to work together. Everyone has a legal obligation under the Act, not just us as main contractor, but you guys as well. You all have legal obligations to us as main contractor to ensure you supply us with the right information and actually that you do our jobs, but you also have it within your own businesses and to your staff. So, you know, I think Alan was touching before the importance of people. You know, it is just a job and people need to go home safely. And the bottom line is that, you know, you have an obligation and we haven't made the obligation. You know, this is the law. It's like a speed limit. You know, you might not agree with it, but at the end of the day, it is the law. So as we said, we want to make sure that everyone goes home at the end of each day. And you know, the amount of downtime that you can lose by somebody being injured is pretty huge. You know, it takes time for the person who's actually been injured. It takes time for the people that actually have to manage it. It takes time to do all the paperwork afterwards. But ultimately, you know, when that person's sitting at home, you know, not being productive, that's a real cost to your business as well. And as I said, as a main contractor, you know, and we see it all the time, that, you know, my foremen work very hard to ensure that the site fencing's up, hazard board's updated, you know, they've got all their paperwork in place, you know, then they leave the site to go away and by the time they come back, the drain layer's turned up and he's dug a trench straight down the middle of the driveway. You know, he's forgot to put cones around it, sparkies are in, temporary supplies in the wrong way, they've had to disconnect it. So subtrades bring hazards to sites continually. And as a main contractor, we have to try and manage those. But as a subcontractor, you guys have to try and manage that as well. And it's ensuring that we communicate with the site so that everybody understands what we're actually working for. And ultimately, whatever business we're in, we're actually all working for the same goal for the customer. All right, so expectations. So I don't know whether you guys sort of work on residential, commercial sites. At the end of the day, all contractors have expectations of what we expect from people. So one of the big ones, it's the health and safety culture. And I know it's a bit of a buzzword culture, but the reality is that it is a culture. It is as much as following a rugby team or a netball team. It is the importance that everybody talks about this and makes health and safety the first question when you're doing a task. And I'd have to say that's been one of the biggest challenges that we've had to face with our own staff, is trying to get them to ask when you say, hey, there's your deadline, this must be done, and making sure that health and safety is what they ask first. What implications does this have? What risks are we going to create from it? How are we going to manage those risks? Documentation. So look, we all love paperwork, but I'd have to say from our side of it, we've tried to minimise our requirements for what subcontractors have to supply. We create a SSSP documentation that manages the site, and subtrades, we ask them to provide task analysis and competency registers. So the important thing is as well that, as I said earlier, it's not just paperwork, it's actually ensuring that the paperwork you submit to us prior to start, the information that you supply to the actual sites that we operate, is actually how you do the job. And the amount of times that we see paperwork saying A and the guys are doing C, you know, it's the paperwork is there to ensure that the tasks are carried out properly. So task analysis, it's kind of it's a big buzzword that's going around. Everyone looks at it. I've given a bit of an example here, and I'm not going to go through every single one of them because it's about 6 pages, but these are some that we've created, and basically they're a tick box. So if you're doing the task, you tick the box. If you're not doing the task, you don't. If the task changes because there's scaffolding in place and you were going to be working off the permanent scaffolding that was supposed to be up the side of the building, and for whatever reason it's now been removed, then you're working off portable scaffolding, you've got to change your task analysis. And that's what your staff need to understand, is that this is their document. This is what they work for on site, and they've got to ensure that what their documentation says is actually what they do. So there's a few pages of that, so I'm not going to go through each one, but it lists with the sequence of steps, and a task analysis is literally how are they going to do the task. We all can sit back in the office and go, I'm going to wire up a switchboard, I need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but at the end of the day, in the real world, that doesn't happen. In the real world, things change on sites. the builder says, I need to liven up the upstairs circuits, can you get that going for me? So those things have to be documented. It's not a big job, it doesn't take a hell of a long time to be fair, once you understand them, but it's important that it's done. And at the end of the day, if anything happens and the task analysis hasn't actually been updated, well then there's a liability sits, and it sits squarely with us as main contractors, but it also sits with you guys as well. So I'll flick through the rest of that. So down the bottom, it's probably one of the most important parts of the task analysis is that it actually gets signed off. So it's not just signed off by the guy doing the job, but on our sites, our site foreman has to run through the task analysis with the subcontractor and sign it off as well. And what it means is that we have to act as policemen to ensure that what has been said on that bit of paper is actually being carried out in the job. And as I said, it doesn't matter if these are handwritten over, things are crossed out and new steps are put in. At the end of the day, it has to be done to ensure compliance and to ensure that people know what they're doing. And it also allows us as a main contractor and our foreman to look at the guys standing on the ladder going, hey, I didn't see him doing anything about ladders, should he be on there? So, documentation. Now, you guys are a self-regulating industry. We rely on your expertise. We don't know about electricity, apart from we know we need it, we know we need a temporary supply, but we do know that you guys have those expertise. We don't question your expertise about what you're doing as far as electrical work goes. We just ask the process to be involved. So we require a TA. Things that they cover are basic stuff. So I don't know if you can see that picture very good there. But it's actually a couple of sparkies, and the guy at the bottom is being very helpful for his mate, holding the ladder up, but I'm sure nowhere in a TA, someone who wrote on the stairs, mate's going to hold the ladder while I climb up it. Okay? Believe it or not, this stuff happens continually. Power tools. Now, everyone, as far as subtrades go, that use a power drill, a skill saw, a grinder on site, they require a task analysis for those items. You have to know that you're using them on site, and your competency registers should actually say you've been trained to do it. A one-liner to say that we're a qualified electrician says, yes, you can put a switchboard in, but it doesn't actually tell us that you know how to use power tools. And a lot of the time, you guys might even be, for example, cutting blocking for hanging switches and so forth. You grab the drop saw. You need to ensure that you are actually trained for it. Probably can't quite see that one either, but the guys at least has made an effort with health and safety to actually put a face mask on. It might be a bucket on his head. I'd say he's made an effort, but again, your safety equipment should comply with what's required under the Act. Simple things like earmuffs, eye protection, the basic things that guys should have. And as a manager, I don't spend a lot of times on site. I try to get out as much as I can, but it's the guys out there every single day who are working it who are at risk. And they are you guys and your staff. So you've got to ensure that they actually know what they're doing. And it's not just asking them, have you used a grinder before? It's actually getting them to ensure that they are competent in it. And you guys have an element to ensure training. You've been trained to be an electrician, you need to be trained to do these things. So what we check. So test and tagging. Got some test and tag boys down here. It's a major thing these days. It's probably, unfortunately for for a lot of our sites, it's one of the things that frustrates me the most. It's a pretty basic thing. It's every 3 months your gear should be test and tagged. It's got to be done. It's also, you should be checking it before you start, and the amount of times that we find test and tags aren't up to date. People buy new equipment, I don't need to get it test and tagged because it's brand new. It's all got to be test and tagged to be on a site. TAs. Yep, we check those. We don't check them before the job, but we actually check them, during the process. And again, it's something that I would expect, as your obligations, that you guys should be filling these out as well. Competency register. Again, yep, one line that says I'm an electrician, I can put in a switchboard, that's great, but has he been trained? And I'll give you an example. We had one recently from a pool company. They were installing a swimming pool. All the guys had done site safe. All the guys had all the requirements, but I was reading through their competency register, and not one of them had a licence to drive a truck or a digger, and they were excavating out a swimming pool. It's simple stuff. They'd been doing it for years, but it wasn't on the competency register. So again, that shows us that they haven't actually checked to see that what they're doing, they're actually qualified. So we also do site audits ourselves. Our foremen provide site audits, and we also get external auditors to go around our sites. I've got to say it's a bit daunting when these guys go out and look at your sites, because effectively they're trying to pick holes in everything. But if you don't do these things, you're never going to improve. And it's very, very important that a third-party eyes look at things, because you actually take learnings from them. It's really important to learn as you go what you do well and what you don't. So the other one as well here to get you home safely is personal accountability. And we see this all the time, that guys really do care, they do give a shit, they do all the paperwork, they do everything that they should, but they actually don't follow it, okay? And I think this is just a classic example of simply that I want to do the right thing, but I need to get the job done. At the end of the day, you've got to not just think it, you've got to not just talk it, you actually have to do it. And again, it starts with everyone in this room, but it also goes to everybody that's on those sites. And I can't emphasise enough how much the culture addresses this sort of thing. It's about people checking, it's about people asking the question to say, hey, should you be doing that? So there's a huge amount of resources out there for everyone. I've got to say that WorkSafe, can be quite scary. It's respectfully, gentlemen, but it's not about being scared of these people. It's actually about trying to make them your friend. They have massive amounts of resources and massive expertise that they will hand over, and it costs you nothing. It's all online. These guys are there to help you, and you can learn a lot from it, that's for sure. I suggest any business owners here jump on their website and look at the top 10 quick Q&A questions that they have, the quick facts that they have at the start, and it explains basically around the current Act, the changes to the Act, and what it's going to look like. Site Safe, I think everyone's aware of that. Safety Charter, again, fantastic resource. And another one that I'd really recommend is Safe Rebuild. Now, I think I saw Andre over here somewhere before. Look, these guys they offer a free 4-hour training session, and it's very interactive. Send your guys onto it. The more you do the stuff, the better. That's about it. Thank you.